right, let's do this. How is it already March? It was just New Year's, like 2 weeks ago. Hello everybody, it is Catherine and we are back today with another book video. Will I include that little applause clip every time I say another book video? Probably, because it's so fun to edit and I think it's funny. So for today's book video, first of all, we're at the desk today, new video setup. Let me know what you think. I wanted to showcase my plants that I definitely have been neglecting and need to water today, but we'll worry about that later after we film today's video. And for today's book video, we are filming our February Reads recap and March TBR. Reason I'm combining both in one video today is because I didn't read as much as I did in February as I did in January. I read about half of the books that I read in January, and I was expecting this. I was expecting a little book stamina decline because I read a lot of books in January, and February is a shorter month, so I had a feeling I wasn't gonna read as many. But I did read 3 books this month, and I'm excited to share them with you guys, and then I have a few books that I'm hopefully going to read in the upcoming month. So let's go ahead and get into it. Don't wanna keep you guys waiting because I know you're dying to hear what I think about these books. Let me close that door, that feels weird. Okay, I wanted to approach this book video a bit more organized than my previous book videos because honestly with my other book videos I just turn on the camera and start talking, which is just not a good idea. I should have a plan, right? So something different we're doing today. I wrote down all my reviews on my little laptop so I can refer to them and not lose my train of thought as I talk. So hopefully this just makes my reviews of these books more concise and make more sense, and yeah, that's it. I have the 3 books I read this month right here, and honestly, still a great reading month. Like even though it was only 3 books, but 3 great books. Like all these books have good reviews, so I'm excited to talk about them. First up, I did that really hard, I'm sorry Achilles. Guys, I finally read it, and oh my god, I'm so glad I finally did. I completely understand the hype around this book. Like I get why I always see it at Barnes & Noble. I get why so many people on BookTube and Book Talk always talk about this book. It's because it deserves the recognition. All right, to give a quick summary about what this book is about, hopefully I will do it justice. It follows the Great Trojan War, during the war and also times before the war, and it follows the point of view of Patroclus. He is an estranged young Greek prince, and it follows his life and how he eventually meets Achilles and slowly but surely falls in love with him. Swear it's not a spoiler because that's the Greek myth and also it's in the summary. And as we know, Achilles is destined to be best of the Greeks. So it just follows their love story and the story of the Trojan War and just all of it. So the way I would describe this book is, I already said it. This book is heartbreakingly beautiful. Like no 2 words could better describe this book. It'll make you cry if you are sensitive like me. It'll make you love the characters. It'll make you hate the characters. It'll just give you so many emotions. And this book is both plot driven and character driven, which is the best combo for a book. Like, of course you want to be invested in both the plot and the characters, and this book delivers both of that. And on top of that, since it is both plot driven and character driven, I got so invested so fast to this book. Like I was like 50 pages in and I would already die for Patroclus. Like I was just so attached from the get-go, and the way that this book just beautifully captures not only Patroclus falling in love with Achilles falling in love with Patroclus, but it also captures heroic flaws within these Greek characters so well and makes it feel so real as you're reading it. Like even though obviously these are Greek myths about Greek heroes and gods, like it makes them feel human almost as you're reading this book, which is something I really liked about it. It also captures the bad and the ugly of war in general. I usually would not be one to like point that out as far as a book goes. Like I wouldn't point out like the description of war in this book was like, that's not my cup of tea, but the description of war in this book was very well done. It captures all of those aspects so well and blends it into this uniform story. Overall, I gave this book a 5 out of 5. I definitely cried reading it, and I would honestly recommend this book to everyone, no matter what kind of genre of book you like, because me and Caleb have 2 very different types of genre preference, but we both love this book. So I feel like no matter your genre preference, you will find something in this book to appreciate. So this is a book for the masses. Highly recommend Song of Achilles. All right, for the second book I read this month, it is yet another well-known title that you will always see in a Barnes & Noble. This is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was 100% on my February TBR because the show came out yesterday. Today's March 4th, and the show came out yesterday. And I wanted to have had this book read before the show came out so I can watch the show and appreciate it in all its glory. So to give a quick summary about this book, the format of this book is very different. Quick caution because I feel like it's not for everyone. I did see a lot of mixed reviews on Goodreads about people who either loved the format of this book or hated the format of this book. I personally loved it. So it is actually written in interview style. So it's like kind of like you're reading a playwright, like it has a character name and what they said. But it's in the format of an interview, so you can kind of tell that there is like somebody asking the questions to these people in front of them and they're like documenting and jotting it down. And I loved that. I thought it made it super interesting, and then on top of that you also slowly get to learn that some of the characters are unreliable, and that like leaves it open to interpretation, which I feel like just makes the book more interesting in that way. This book follows a fictional band in the 70s, and it follows their rise to fame, their origin story, how the Six became Daisy Jones and the Six, and it was just such an enjoyable read. It truly felt like I was watching a documentary about a real life band. Like it felt so real reading it. This book also touches on drugs, love, and wanting what you can't have, which I feel like sounds like a lot of movies that revolve around bands in the 70s. But I feel like the reason that this book does the same is because Taylor Jenkins Reid is, again, trying to make it feel like you are reading about a real life band. All right, to kind of give like my experience reading this book, I started reading this book on its own as is, and then I probably was like a little less than a fourth into it until I discovered the audiobook. And guys, if you're gonna read this book, if you haven't read this book yet and you're considering it, definitely download the audiobook. It is so worth it because since there's so many characters in the book, with the audiobook they have different voice actors for each character during like their portion of the interview. And it literally like made the whole experience of taking in this story like way more immersive. Like once I remembered whose voice was whose for the voice actors in the audiobook, like I felt like I could actually visualize the character as well each time a new person was speaking. So I highly recommend the audiobook. At some points felt like I was in the studio like watching this all unfold, which was a really cool experience. Ended up giving this book a 4.5 stars out of 5. Didn't give it a full 5 out of 5. It did feel really repetitive at some points, especially during the parts where they were discussing the recording of their song or album. Like it kind of felt like the same scene over and over again, where it was the band wants to go a certain way with the song or the album. Billy and Daisy, the two main characters, they're obviously the stars of the band, so it's like they get a final say each time. The band is upset, song ends up being a hit, so no one can really complain, and then it repeats. So like that's one thing I wish was a bit different. I wish there was a bit more variation as far as talking about the whole songwriting experience and the production experience, but I mean, it was also probably realistic. That's probably how a lot of bands function, especially when there are certain people in the band who are just more famous than others. That's why I gave it a 4.5 out of 5, but I still loved it dearly, and I am so excited to watch the show, especially because of the cast. And I'm especially excited for Sam, what's his last name? I always forget how to say it. Claflin? Let's just go with that. He's the guy who played Finnick Odair in the Hunger Games. He was in the 5th Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Wait, 4th Pirates of the Caribbean movie. He was in Me Before You. Oh, and he was in Love, Rosie, one of my favorite romance movies of all time. So he's in a lot of things that I love. So the fact that he is playing the main male character makes me so excited to watch the show. And also I saw who plays Daisy in the trailer, and she literally looks like exactly what I envisioned in the book as Daisy. Anyways, 4.5 stars out of 5, Daisy Jones and the Six. Okay, and now for my last book that I read in February, I felt like I still had to read your classic rom-com because it is the month of February, it's the month of Valentine's Day. I needed to read just a good old love story. And I found this book when I was at the public library. I have this in my last vlog, and I really was just attracted to the cover, and then I read the summary and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this book a shot. I told myself if I didn't like it, I would just DNF it and return it back to the library, but ended up getting hooked within like the first few chapters. This is Last Chance Books by Kelsey Rodkey. I literally have the library book still, so glad I get to share this in the video. And as you can see, for good reason, I was attracted to the cover art because it is just such a cute little cover. Like, look at the little characters and they're on top of books, and then it's pink. Like, This book literally screamed, you have to read this during February. Like, you have to read this for Valentine's Day. This book was labeled as YA, but I don't think it is because it didn't feel like a YA book. I mean, like, it kind of did at some points, but then at some points it definitely didn't. So I think my library mislabeled this, and I feel like I should tell them. Then I went to Barnes & Noble yesterday and saw that this book was not in the YA section, it was in the adult romance section. So I think it's an adult romance book. But anyways, besides that point, let me give you guys a quick summary. It is about Madeline and Jasper. Madeline works at a local bookstore that her aunt owns, and then Jasper works at a competing franchise bookstore that his family owns across the street. You can kind of see where this goes. Typical enemies to lovers. They have like a little prank war, and of course, as you can probably assume, they start to develop feelings for each other, but neither one admitting it yet. And then Madeline at the same time is trying to save her aunt's bookstore. Because since it is a local bookstore, it's not getting nearly as much revenue. So Madeline makes it her mission to fundraise as much money as possible through events, through a GoFundMe, through anything she can to save this bookstore, because her goal is to eventually own the bookstore. The way I would describe this book, typical rom-com, super cute, lighthearted. The banter was really good. I found myself literally giggling at some of the banter they were having, so that's always a good sign that there's some good banter in here. I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. While it was nothing groundbreaking, like it really is just your typical rom-com, I still enjoyed reading it. I got pretty invested. Like, I really wanted to know what happened to the bookstore. I wanted to know how Madeline and Jasper would eventually, you know, get together. And the fact that I was not only invested in the love story portion, but also the background plot portion, like, I feel like that's always a good sign of a rom-com that just has a little more depth than what your typical rom-com would have. I ended up giving this book 4 stars out of 5, because again, nothing groundbreaking, but still really enjoyed it. Last Chance Books by Kelsey Radke. Okay, now that we're through with that, I'm gonna quickly go through my March TBR. Try not to talk about them in depth too much, because I'm sure I'll have another video where I talk about like the summary and my review of them once I actually finish reading them. But let's go through real quick. First book I have already started. This is Bibliolepsy by Gina Apostol. This is a Filipino historical fiction book that takes place during the time of the dictatorship of Marcos. I've been wanting to read more Filipino books this year so that I can not only learn about like my culture and its history, but also just to read something that I can directly relate to. Since this is historical fiction, obviously I can't directly relate to a lot of it because I didn't live during this time, but just getting to read the familiarity of like Filipino culture and some Tagalog terms, like, I don't know, just makes it feel more personal as I read it. So excited to continue this book. I'm on page like 58 and I like it so far. I'm enjoying it. Next up on my TBR, we have Modern Lovers. I have shown this in the TBR before. I haven't read it yet, but it's because I keep forgetting that I have it. Basically about a friend group, that's all I'll say, because I don't want to make this video super long. It's by Emma Straub, who is also the author of The Vacationers, which I feel like is one of her more popular titles. But the only thing is, it is a hardback, and I'm doing a lot of traveling this month, so I don't know if I'll be able to bring this with me, because I'm flying Spirit. I can only bring but so many things with me. So this is like a tentative TBR. And then next up we have another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. My friend Anita actually gave this to me for my birthday last year, so shout out Anita. This is Malibu Rising, literally one of her most popular titles. I felt like this would be the perfect month to read this book because of the vibes, to be quite honest. I'm going to Miami this month for a bachelorette trip, and then I'm also going to LA this month for another bachelorette trip, and I felt like this would be just the perfect travel book to have in these like beachy vacation settings. So, I mean, look at the cover. Does this not scream like vacation book? So I'm really excited to read this. I have not yet read a TJR book that I do not enjoy, so I have a feeling I'll enjoy this one. That's it for my TBR. I kept it short this month since I am doing some traveling this month, so I don't want to get too ahead of myself and say that I'll be able to read a whole bunch of books while I'm traveling. But hopefully I can get through at least another 3 books, because I feel like that'd just be a realistic goal to have. That's it for this video. That was my February recap and my March TBR. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I can't wait to talk about more future books with you guys. And for anyone that is new to this channel that has found me through my book videos, thank you so much for joining along. I am really excited to continue building my little book YouTube community. And yeah, comment down below what is on your March TBR. Would love to hear your guys' recommendations, or comment down below books you guys read in February. Or comment down below if you've read any of the books I just mentioned and let me know what you think of them. Let's start talking. Let's start talking about these books. Okay, that's it. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace. Did I really just say peace? Okay.